Okay, so just for fun, I'd love to hear from two or three of you. What kind of themes bubbled up? What kind of things did you hear from each other? And maybe even things that you'd say, it sure sounds like we ought to touch on this tonight. If there were things you kind of kept hearing over and over again. What'd you hear?
One of the things that came up in the idea of tragedy was the idea of loss of connection. That even as we're coming back together, that we, for lack of a better way of putting it, there was the excuse to be out for a little while. And so people aren't coming back because they have lost that sense of community and that sense of connection. Yeah. And how do we bring that back? And how do we make them feel wanted and needed to engage within that community?
That's good. We'll talk about that. Good. What else? What other themes did you hear or things you want to make sure we cover tonight?
Well, one thing we've talked about a lot at Parkway Hills about, and this feels particularly true of me. Those of you who are in group with me know this. I started this job in January 14th of last year. So I got a whopping month and a half normal.
Yeah. If that.
Yeah.
I was in literally the exact same boat.
It's a real hoot, isn't it? It's a real hoot, isn't it?
What do you describe it?
Yeah, so one of the things that is, I feel particularly true of me in my youth ministry, and then now also the tech stuff I have taken on as token millennial, that we've also talked about the church as a whole, is we've been a year between things. So it's a really good, it is an opportunity to reevaluate some stuff and see if what we were doing actually still fits and actually still is beneficial to us.
There's a little bit of positive on the flip side of only having a month and a half before you had to go underground. The positive of being able to try some new stuff without all that institutional paralysis. That's great. What else? What other themes bubbled up or things you think are important for us to touch on? I would love to call you by name, but it's just 662-515-1236.
My name is Olivia Booker.
Olivia, welcome to the party, even if you're just a number, but you're not a number to this group.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we talked about that is when we go back, the new things that have been implemented that, you know, although we've not been able to be in person, the ministries have really grown by use of technology. So to continue to implement those in ways that will continue in the ministry once we go back in person, not to abandon that, but to enhance it so that the people who have come on board who normally wouldn't have been with us will still be able to be with us by whatever way, whether it's live streaming, Zoom or whatever. Because it's been my experience talking with people across the board that attendance and Bible studies and Sunday school and worship, they're up. Even the financial end of it has increased. So although we've gone through a change, it's not been all bad. It's given us, we've had to find new ways to continue to do ministry, and it's been fruitful.
Wow, that's a beautiful perspective. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that Jeannie gave you a name on your screen, so that's exciting.
Okay. I'm not just a number anymore.
Must have been Ed. Okay.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Anything else that y'all want to highlight that y'all talked about or themes that bubbled up for you? Okay. So rules of engagement, we kind of talked about it. If at any point in our time, just interrupt me or send it to Jeannie and she'll be happy to interrupt me. Okay. So many of you are familiar with the principles behind sustainable youth ministry. Let me just I'm just going to give you a quick sort of, 30,000 foot look as a backdrop for what we're talking about. one of the patterns that we observed over lots of years of youth ministry is that ministries would sort of rise and fall on the particular youth pastor who had been hired. And so if you had a lousy youth pastor, the ministry would shrink and sort of fall apart, and sometimes, get into a depressed state. If you had a great youth minister, quote, end quote, great youth minister, the group would grow. But often when that great youth minister left, the whole thing would fall apart like a house of cards because everything was built on that youth minister. And so the whole idea behind sustainable youth ministry is that we try to build a foundation for the ministry that's not dependent on any one individual. So that, and a lot of times, the truth is, if you do sustainable youth ministry, it will slow you down. Let me just say that again. If you build a sustainable youth ministry, it's going to slow you down because it takes longer to build a 30-story skyscraper than it does to build a shack in your backyard. You can get that shack in your backyard done in a day. But if you want to build something that's going to last, it's going to go a lot slower. And most of the time, we like the stuff that is visible and on, what we might call above the waterline. If you're thinking about a boat, right? We like to see the things that are above the waterline. But if you hadn't taken care of below the waterline, that ship is going down, right? And so we consider this sustainable youth ministry is really built on the idea of building systems. So can somebody just give me a few examples of a system of the body?
The bowels.
What was that, Corey?
Bowels, man. Somebody got to poo.
Wouldn't that be your digestive system?
Digestive system.
At least
That's
call
a
it
better
the
way of
right
putting it.
thing.
But
That's
when
the
you
best
go
way
to
of
my
putting it.
kids, you
I knew
always,
it would come out in a youth ministry's
yeah,
group.
there's always going to be poop involved in a youth ministry gathering. I see how this works. It's always sort of a defecation fixation is there.
I, for one, would feel uncomfortable talking about that topic.
So the digestive system is one. What's another system of the body?
The circulatory system.
Circulatory system. What else we got?
Nervous system.
The nervous system. Okay, you get the idea, right? There are actually 13 or 14 systems of the body. And every system is built on a number of component parts. So, for example, in the skeletal system, give me one of the components of the skeletal system.
The femur.
The femur. There you go. The femur bone's connected to the, yeah, right. So the idea behind systems thinking in ministry is that there are so many of these component parts that have to fit together in any of these systems. And most of the time, all we're looking at is what we can see on the surface. But in order for it to work, those component parts have kind of got to work together. And most of the time, frankly, we just spend very little time on systems. We really focus mostly on building a program, building relationships with kids. And when we do that, it puts us at the center. It puts the leader at the center rather than putting the kids at the center. The systems are a way of really giving a dance floor to the kids' discipleship journey, right? And so that's the metaphor we like to use, is that instead of focusing just on the dancer, let's make sure we build a dance floor where a moderately gifted dancer can do just fine. So can anybody name for me one of the systems of ministry? You understood the metaphor once Corey got you thinking about the digestive system, but
like youth ministry or ministry in general?
Either one, actually, but youth ministry specifically, because that's your expertise.
All right, parents.
Okay, so parent engagement, you'd have a whole system around parent engagement. And a lot of times, instead of creating a system, what we do is we send an announcement, we're going to have a parent meeting, and then we complain that no parents come. We're going to do a parent Sunday school class, and we complain that no parents come. Instead of saying it's going to take a long time to build this system, to build engagement with parents. So part of that system might be, first step, I'm going to learn the names of the parents in our ministry. Second step is I'm going to make a list of their names, their phone numbers, and their email addresses. The third step is I'm going to have a one-on-one meeting with every parent in our minute, whatever it is, right? You build this system with all the component parts that has leverage to actually make change. But just doing it with one great idea usually doesn't do much. Sometimes the analogy I use is a system's like a tool, and imagine changing a tire without your tools. I guess you could do it, but it's pretty dang hard. You got to somehow lift up the car, and you got to turn when you've got the jack and all the little, the lug wrench, it works just fine. So we want to get a system in place. So parent ministry is a great example. Can somebody give me another example of a system of ministry? Come on, Olivia, talk to us.
Recruitment and retention of your participants.
Okay, so
that's actually true systems.
You've got recruitment of your students, and then you've got recruitment of your volunteers. Yeah, all those. And so the recruitment system, a lot of times we say, well, I sent out the email,
right?
Or I put it on Facebook and nobody came. Well, that's not a system. That's one of the components. But if we're struggling to get kids to come, we work a process. We put a lot of components in place, one of which can be a Facebook announcement, but a lot of it, as you all know, is all about relationships and personal invitations, right? Okay, so I want to name 3 systems that I think are the most neglected, but have the most leverage in creating a sustainable ministry. Okay, the first one is database. And that is just keeping an accurate list of your kids, your prospective kids, your parents. Where did the kids go to school? What's their birthday? What year they're going to graduate? That database system, everything is going to pivot off of that. And if that information is corrupt, your ministry is going to be hampered, right? Jesus didn't have to worry about a database because he just had 12 kids in his youth group. And he kind of kept, and they traveled together. I mean, they sort of had camp for 3 years. But everybody else, the rest of us probably need to have a list, right? The second one is recruiting. I'm stealing from Olivia here, and I'm focusing particularly on building your volunteer team. So building a system for recruitment. And then the third one is your calendar. Having a consistent plan laid out where you know what's coming up. I used to say, you need to build your 1-year calendar. Now I would say, you build your 3-month calendar and you put the other 9 months in very light pencil, right? I have a little document. If you want to play with this idea of systems, I have this little document called the 17 systems, and Ed will email that to y'all, and feel free to ignore it if you'd like. But it actually lets you sort of survey yourself and identify how well you're doing in each of those systems. Might be fun for you. But COVID has interrupted our attention to systems and often left us scrambling and paralyzed. A lot of times when we're used to a system working, playing in the background, we forget to actually rebuild it, and we don't know what to do. We get stuck. And so I'm going to show you a quick little video. A lot of you have seen this video before, but it just reminds me of what happens when something like a pandemic comes and we get paralyzed. So let's take a look at this one, if you will.
Oh, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is there?
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
So it reminds me of the way a lot of us in ministry have, it was a shock. This whole, wait, we can't meet anymore. Oh, okay. We're just going to take a few weeks off. That felt nice, didn't it? We're just going to take a few weeks off. And that turned into a couple months off. And if somebody had said to us, today is the anniversary. Today is the 1-year anniversary of the official naming of the pandemic. If somebody had said to us a year ago, we're not going to get to meet in person at church for our youth ministry for a year, we'd have laughed them out of the room, right? Because none of this was really anticipated. But as Warren Buffett says, when the tide goes out, you find out who's swimming naked. And what's happened in this season, it has shown who has built a ministry that's entirely dependent on gathering people around an enthusiastic event or a great personality, and who's making disciples, right? I just want to suggest that yes, systems are important and they're as important as ever, but they've also got to be combined with innovation and change management. And there's a word that's often used for innovators that comes before innovators. Anybody want to take a shot at what that is? It sounds a little bit like the pandemic. You ever heard of the term disruptive innovation? A disruptive innovator. A lot of people who are, strong leaders, they stir things up, they disrupt, and disruption is really the kissing cousin of innovation. I'm raising the question, what if disruption is our friend? What if the Spirit of God is using this disruption to invite us into the innovation that we were just unable to do because we've been doing ministry for the same way for decades? It's just, I don't know about y'all, but after doing ministry at a church for almost 30 years, there were to get rid of Sunday school or youth group or mission trip or small groups or youth choir or all the things that we were doing. There was just too much inertia to get rid of them. But I think, Jeff, you said this gives us a chance to reevaluate the things we want to keep and the things that we might not be able to keep. It's really interesting. My seminary was very proud of the fact that they didn't say it in these words, but basically they're very proud of the fact that they would never do online learning. They would always do residential education. Want to see God laugh, right? Guess what they're doing? Online classes all day long. So I'm just suggesting, let's combine, when we think about sustainable ministry, it's this creative dance between systems, like we named, that we can build, and also being courageous enough to disrupt and do some innovative new things, try some things. Now, the problem, y'all have tried new things in the church. So just for a second, let's process. What are some of the challenges with trying innovative things in the church?
That old classic line of "That's not how we've
Say
always
again?
done it before." That classic line of "That's not how we've done it before."
Yeah, we've never done it that way before. Yeah. What else? What makes it hard?
People don't like change.
Yeah, people are naturally, we're all naturally resistant to change. Maddie, what were you going to say?
No, you're good. Ours is that there's like two different generations. So obviously I'm younger. This is my first year doing youth ministry. And then there's like the older generation in the church, and it's like colliding because we're like, oh, this is going to work, we promise. And then they're like, we've never done this before. And so ours was just like, we had to figure it out and everybody had to get on the same page. So
yeah. Oh, that's good. A lot of times the resistance comes in a generational way. That's good insight. What else?
There's
Go,
also
Jeannie.
always that fear of when things do work that somebody else is going to go, oh, look at what we did, and then try to take it over and make it their own. Or maybe that's just what happens at my church. I mean, but I can only speak to me, I guess.
Yeah, they'll resist. And then once it works, they'll go, yeah, I think we'll now take charge of that. That's good. Jeannie, what you got?
I was just going to say that I think that the pandemic and COVID have actually given us, I guess, a good excuse to, we have to change the way we do some things. Yeah. Some of it is annoying, like measuring out 6 feet apart of chairs and wearing masks and some of the safety things or whatever. But being able to say, well, we had to be creative. We had to step outside the box and do something. I'm hoping that spirit of people willing to try something new. It's like even a lot of our older adults have been doing Zoom Sunday school, and they would have never have done that. But so hopefully maybe people are willing to try new things. Although I think once we get, past the pandemic, whenever that actually happens, I think there's going to be a lot of falling. Okay, we did it this year, but that was because of COVID. Now we want to go back, but maybe there's some things that we did because of COVID that now might become a norm or a new tradition or a new thing that we do. I know, like for our youth group, we normally at Christmas time, our youth would put on a special Christmas program, drama, music, whatever, and just youth-led worship service. And with COVID, we couldn't do that. And so we thought outside the box, and we did a drive-through live nativity and opened it up to our community. And it was insane. And I mean, we reached a whole lot more people in our community, like over 1,200 people came through, and versus if we had just done the regular program. What your program is awesome, but now we have people saying, are we going to do that next year? Like, oh, I don't know. Let's not commit just yet that this is going to become, but hopefully COVID is allowing people at least to try new things. And maybe that'll stick around and not, we've always done it this way. I do think we're going to have some resistance from some people that are not never, but I think they may keep their guard up for quite a while on just the personal space issues and some of the other things that, doing the Knox game or whatever. You might still have some students that are like, I don't want to be in that space, or parents that are hesitant, but.
Oh, that's good. Well, we've done some research. Guess what percentage of the time when you do innovation, guess what percentage of the time you get resistance?
100.
100%. If you get resistance when you try something new, it's because you're doing your job. The key is we just don't need to get freaked out when there's resistance. We just smile and power through. And a lot of times we'll get a no, and we'll get a no, and we'll get a no. And then eventually that door opens up. So
work, but isn't the opposite side of that coin true as well, that you need to when you hear that resistance, to hear what's not being said as well, to listen to the people and hear what their fears and what their concerns for their church and for the ministries are as well, and to try to incorporate maybe some of that into your future plan.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a much better way to say it. Because what we don't want to just be stubborn and my way is the right way. We want to say, I mean, people are afraid of losing. They don't want to lose. You know, the resistance is really an expression of loss, that they're afraid they're going to lose something. And if we can help them say, what is gained is going to be so much greater than what is lost. But sometimes it takes 6 months for folks to live into that. Great work there. So you guys get it. We're combining both systems, institutional systems and disruptive change. Those don't have to be opposed to each other. A lot of times in youth ministry, you tend to be one or the other. You're a disruptor or you're a systems person. The disruptor just blows stuff up and leaves carnage in their wake. The systems person can actually just create a lot of staleness and be, I'm a Presbyterian, y'all, and nobody is as organized as Presbyterians. I mean, we are, our motto is decently and in order. I mean, it's all about getting the system right. Y'all have a book of discipline, so don't make too much fun of me. But the whole idea of, follow this system, follow this process, we get calcified in that process. And we have trouble, sort of allowing that system to not be an end in itself. So, okay. So I want to work a little bit on what I'm calling disruptor secrets. People who can, right now, we don't need to disrupt because we have enough disruption, but we're gonna surf on the disruption for the kingdom. So I've just got a few principles for you. I've got, basically two. One is about who we are, and the other is some tools I want to give you. Of course, the first one is, I'm going to see how many Bible scholars we have. Proverbs 4:23. What do you got? Anyone? Bueller? Somebody's looking it up, I'll bet you. It's usually used in the sex talk to say to kids, don't have sex before you get married. It says, above all else. Remember this? Above all else, guard your heart, for out of your heart flow the springs of life. And a lot of times in ministry, the last heart that we guard is our own. We're concerned about kids. We're concerned about maybe even our family, but we are not following the flight attendant instructions, right? Somebody want to do that for me?
You're talking about when the mask falls down to make sure you put yours on first before you help somebody else.
There you go. Nice.
I wasn't sure if that's where we were going.
So if we're going to navigate change, y'all, we're just not going to do it well if we bring an anxious, reactive presence to this process. If all we do is get mad at the people that say no, that are resisting, we're just going to love them and let other people's self-differentiation essentially means other people's craziness will not make me crazy. Let me say that again. Other people's craziness don't have to make us crazy. When we say things like, oh, they made me so mad, we're giving away power that really we don't have to give away. Nobody can make us anything. We can take a step back, take a beat. Brene Brown talks about, you let the ball settle. Y'all remember this image? Like when you're playing soccer, novice soccer players, they just kick wildly at the ball, but good soccer players let the ball settle and then they take a hit. And a lot of times we are in a reactive mode when something doesn't go our way. Okay. So I want to give you two sort of two sort of personal tools. A lot of you are probably already doing this. As I have watched, folks that kind of stay in ministry for the long haul, most of them have what I call a daily rhythm. And it could just be, I get up, I go for a walk for 10 minutes. I read a chapter in the Bible. I do a little prayer time. I get in the lotus position and then do a downward dog and whatever, right? I read a devotion. But the whole idea is every time you have to make a decision, it takes brain power and energy from you. So that so every time you're deciding, should I do this or do this, it's sucking energy away from you. So what you want to have is, particularly as you start your day, is you want to have some sort of rhythm. I eat something, but don't try to do it all at one time. Just try to do one thing every day consistently, and then build on that. And maybe you're familiar with this guy. This guy became famous for this, and he's written a book called Mini Habits. He became famous for setting the mini habit. Anybody know this story? 1 push-up a day. And he started a whole revolution in his life by committing to 1 push-up a day. So that if he went to bed, it wasn't like he had like this 45-minute ritual he had to do. He just had to, every day, no matter what I do, I'm doing 1 push-up a day. Well, of course, while he's down there, what happens? Well, let's do a few more, right? And the idea behind mini habits is they've got to feel ridiculous. If it's like, well, no, I could do a lot more than that. Well, sure, go ahead and do it, but make your goal something very small that you can accomplish, so that by the time you get 10, 15 minutes into your day, you've gone bam, 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 bam. I've done these things and now I'm ready to begin. Something about that daily rhythm and it being automatic, that you kind of do the same thing every morning. For some people, you get up at 10 o'clock. We'll do it at 10 o'clock. Some people get up at 4 o'clock. Do it at 4. Whenever you're up, a daily rhythm is a way of guarding our hearts. Let me take a breath and let you push back on that, because some of you may say, I can't do it. I'm too spontaneous.
Mark, so go ahead, whoever was talking.
I was just about to say, your spontaneity is going to exhaust you. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so Mark, give an analogy or an example, like if we're not practicing that, like what do we launch out into? What is the step one for? I mean, I know it's just something simple, something basic, but what would you recommend for someone that says, Mark, give me a roadmap here. What's step one?
Yeah, if Mike, if it were you, I would just say, okay, Mike, I want you to first thing in the morning, I want you to read a chapter of scripture every day. And if that feels like too much, I'd say read a verse. Other people, we might say, right. Actually, I did this with a client today. I just want you to write 1 line in your journal. And you can write more, but write 1 line in your journal. If it's 10 o'clock at night and you're exhausted, give me 1 line. What do you got? And it's not Lenny B, but it's, forget your name. Tell me.
Angela.
Thank you, Angela.
It's okay. So it's kind of both. It's spontaneous, but it's something that I do every day. We were doing a spiritual formation class and we were talking about like flash prayer. So as soon as I see something, there's a need for prayer, I stop what I'm doing, and we pray, and you pray then, so that it's something you do every day, because there's always going to be a need every day, but it puts you in that habit of being in tune, and just abiding in Jesus. Even if it's a minute, 15 seconds, you just stop what you're doing, you set your mind where it should be, instead of waiting till like the end of the night to say all of your prayers. If you make these little moments throughout the day, I've just found that it helps to keep me like centered. They may not be at the same time every day, but I know that they're going to come up every day for me.
Oh, that's a great one. Thanks, Angela. Good.
So can I share a really bad one that is good?
I can't wait with
All
that
right.
connection.
When I first got into youth ministry, so I would have been at this point, it was a little past, I was probably 26, and I had a group that I was working with that I was like students, juniors and seniors, and I was really trying to challenge them to get deeper. And there was the real reality that I was pushing them to do something that I wasn't doing myself. You know, I was like, hey, I want you to be in the Word. And I found myself going, you know, I'm really praying and I'm really doing, but I'm not really studying, because I've gotten to that thing where prepping for lessons replaced, you know, like growth, you know?
Yeah,
So,
right.
So because I wanted to challenge myself and these students who were telling me their life is so busy, I bought them a Canteen Bible, okay? And I challenged myself and them to do one thing. I was like, how do I create time when there's no time? So this Canteen Bible with kind of a guide, I said, put this on the back of your toilet, and every time you use it, read. And I kid you not, at 43, my spiritual life has grown from a sitting posture, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm not 26 anymore, but at 43, like, I can tell you some of the most honest, truthful study things. And I find myself going, okay, I probably need to get up and go reposition and finish reading this. But like you said, it was a habit for me. Like, it was not one push-up a day, but I knew I was going to commit time in this area. So how can I maximize it? So now that y'all are all going to make fun of me, we actually call that with our students crap time. So just, you know, yeah. So I need Jesus, but I'm just sharing that. But it was a simple way to say, as long as I stay regular, I will stay regular. So
wow. CRAP stands for Christian Reading and Prayer, in case you're wondering. I'm
embarrassed, so I'm gonna black myself out here.
See, bowel movements. I'm saying.
So, you know, sometimes it's something like, I'm gonna drink, 32 ounces of water in the first hour that I'm awake, or it can be just about anything. The whole idea is not to go crazy. You want to start out like you can hold out, and you're going to change these up, as it goes. But you want to, I'm just suggesting starting the day with a default rhythm. When you start your day with a default rhythm, you sort of feel rhythmic all week, all day long, and you've begun to make the most important things the most important things. That's part of guarding the heart.
I think that along with that, sorry, I'm really not an interrupter. That gave me a lot of anxiety.
You did so good. I'm so sorry.
I think that while we're establishing our rhythms, like be they baby steps or small, I think it's probably going to naturally point out in us our unhealthy rhythms that are maybe already pre-existing. And those can be so dangerous, having an unhealthy morning rhythm or daily rhythm, like once you get to work rhythm, that can really affect your headspace that day, your spiritual guidance that day. And just having this conversation, I'm already evaluating, like, Annie, what do I do in the first 2 hours of getting to work? So that's just my 2 cents.
Oh, that's good. And way to be bold and interrupt. What do most of us do? The first thing when we wake up in the morning, right? Well, I'm just looking at the clock. I'm just looking at the clock, right? I'm not really doing it. I'm not, right? Speaking of unhealthy rhythms, to say I'm going to have screen time in the first 30 seconds that I'm awake, it could be to say, okay, before I pick up my phone, I will blank, blank, or blank, right? No, that's a great highlight. Good. Jeannie, what do you got?
I was just going to say, and I think sometimes, Mike alluded to this, sometimes in ministry, sometimes it's easy to replace that personal growth time with our preparation for, our Bible studies or our messages and all that kind of stuff. And And it's hard for us to have someone hold us accountable because we're supposed to be the ones like trying to establish those accountability things for our students with their small group leader or each other or whatever. But I know like it can be overwhelming even for any Christian to kind of take that next step. And I know we challenged our students this year to just start somewhere, you know, and there's a couple who several years ago, they made a New Year's resolution to run a marathon every day of the year, a full marathon, 26 whatever miles. And they did it. They ran a marathon every day for one full year. They live in Australia, New Zealand, something like that. You can look them up. But what I tried to, and that's so impressive, right? But what I tried to tell my students is they didn't wake up one day after, you know, laying on the couch for a year during a pandemic, never have run even a 5K. They had to build themselves up to that. So don't beat yourself up if you struggle to spend an hour in reading the Bible or an hour in prayer or whatever. Start somewhere to say every day I'm gonna pray, or I'm gonna write down one praise where I see God at work, one need that I have, one need somebody else has, or whatever. And then before you know it, that 3 minutes turns into 5 minutes, turns into 15 minutes to, it's like, oh my gosh, I've been here 2 hours and I don't want to leave, you know? And so I just want to encourage people. It's so easy, especially those in ministry, to set such high expectations on ourselves. Sometimes it's not even realistic, especially if we have family and other careers and other responsibilities, and then the overwhelming everything with the pandemic. And allow yourself some grace, but also make sure your targets are reasonable. The reasonable goals that you can meet and have some success. And you said the one push-up. Yeah, I'm gonna go back to doing crunches again. But my problem is I lost my accountability partner. You know, I used to have a student text me, "Did you do your crunches today?"
The accountability partner reminds me, my son-in-law at Christmas time said to me, "Okay, we're gonna do 26 push-ups a day." I don't know why 26. And I said, "No, I don't need another thing to feel guilty about." But you know what I started doing the next day? 26 push-ups a day, because he was texting me about it, right? I think there's something to that. Okay, I want to plow through the other sort of self-care habit. The other tending to our heart habit is the habit of Sabbath. Living rhythmically daily, of course, but then living rhythmically weekly. I'm convinced that God created us to live in this rhythm where we unplug every 6 days. And there's actually been studies done that people who work 6 days and take a day off get more done than people who work 7 days straight. It's crazy. So again, it is, and just remember, it's in that list of 10 things that happen in Exodus chapter 20. You're right there next to murder. And we treat Sabbath like it's, oh, that'd be a nice thing if I wasn't so busy. But we have to fight for it, but it's a way of guarding our heart. Okay. I want to give 10 minutes or so to a few tools that can help us become more agile and nimble in ministry. The first one is to think about a time horizon. When things are stable and consistent, we can think in longer terms. So, it used to be we'd have 5-year plans. Then we sort of stepped down to 3-year plans. It's kind of hard to do much more than a 12-week plan right now. And the more chaos that is around us, the more we need to sort of shorten the time horizon that we're focused on. Does that concept make sense? Are we okay? You kind of there? So there are a couple of specific approaches that I really like and would love for you to consider. One of them is in a book called The 12-Week Year. And the whole idea behind the 12-week year is, if you set a goal for a year from now, when do you start thinking about that goal? When do you start worrying about that goal?
12 weeks before the year's ended.
About 12 weeks before the year is up, right? So thinking in terms of, we're going to have, instead of thinking in terms of annual goals, you think in terms of 12-week goals, and maybe 2 or 3 things you want to get done in those 12 weeks. And then you put a scoreboard together of the things you want to do on a weekly basis to get toward that 12-week year goal. One of the big observations of this sort of agile thinking is that halfway done is the same as not started. If you were in a car factory producing cars and you had 100 cars that were halfway built that had been sitting there for a month, that's the same as not having any cars built. And so a lot of times in ministry, we are in process about a ton of stuff. The shortened time horizon has all kind of benefits, one of which is we actually get something done. And done is the engine of more. As soon as we get something done, there's an increase in our momentum. The team feels like we did something. We can celebrate. Bam, we crossed the finish line. And so it does that, and it makes the team happier. And happy people get more stuff done. When we are distracted, Martha, by many things, we're just slowed down and in the muck. And in a time when there's so much distracting, so much disruption, and we're on the screen all the time, y'all, Zoom hours are like dog years. Like multiply, this call really is taking 7 hours of your time, right? It's just exhausting, right? But when we can say, done, that one's out the door, that's awesome. And so it may be you do a 12-week focus on recruiting volunteers, or you do I got a buddy who did a 12-week focus on, I want to lose 10 pounds. So it can be ministry-wise, it can be you personally, and then you do practices every week that are going to lead you to the result that you're looking for. So I just want you to think about, how can you shorten the time horizon rather than thinking, what are we doing to get to at the end of the year? Think in terms of a 12-week year. And it's a great little book. If you want, that's the name of the book, 12-Week Year. The second process is really a process that grows out of agile thinking. It's called Scrum. Are any of you familiar with this process called Scrum? Well, anybody know where that word comes from?
Isn't that rugby?
That's rugby.
Yeah, it's a rugby term. What happens in the Scrum?
Everybody just kind of gets bundled up together and nobody knows really what's happening.
Well, they want the ball to get out in a way that they can begin to play.
Benefit their team.
Yeah,
they throw the ball down the field.
In the Scrum, they're all together, and they keep moving it down the field, and they're handing off to each other, but they're moving together in mass. Everybody is kind of playing the same position rather than, kind of the silo stuff of, well, I can't get that done because I'm waiting on getting something from somebody else, or this committee's got to approve it. In the Scrum philosophy, you get everybody who's a part of delivering that particular result. You get everybody as a part of the Scrum team, and then you do sprints. So you name a change that you'd like to see, and let's just say we want to see 20 more kids involved in our ministry, and so that may take more than a sprint, but that becomes your sort of target, and then you build a backlog of all the tasks that you need to do to make that happen, and you put those all up on the wall, and then you select a single thing that you think you can get done in 2 weeks. So Scrum is a team project. 12-week year you can do on your own. And you take an individual deliverable like, okay, by the end of this 2-week sprint, the project we want to have finished at the end of that 2-week sprint is that we will have had a personal conversation with 40 kids who have not been a part of our ministry. That's the end result. And then every day you're meeting for 5 minutes to say, okay, what'd you do? What do you want to do? That's everything up there is a task to be done. Which one of those do you want to take today? You grab a Post-it note. That's the thing you're going to work on that day. And the team is responsible. There's nobody supervising, nobody telling them what to do. They grab a thing. We're all moving toward the end result of 40 conversations with kids. And then at the end of and you're tracking it. You got a little scoreboard going. And so you're thinking, well, I don't even know 40 kids. How are we going to do that? Well, to do that, we have to have a plan for meeting more, whatever it is. But the idea is you do a 2-week sprint, get something done, check it off. We've done it. It could be, we're going to write a confirmation curriculum. It could be, we're going to plan a killer parenting event that has 20 parents show up for. But the idea is our battle right now, y'all, is a battle of focus. We desperately need to get focus and do one thing at a time. Y'all probably know all the research about multitasking. It makes us dumb. Literally, I mean, the studies show it just decreases our IQ when we try to do more than one thing at a time. So to have a singular, let me just clarify, operationally, you've got to keep your ministry running. So this is not the only thing you're doing, but you have this singular focus. Part of the reason I think we get so discouraged in ministry is that it feels like, nothing has changed. I'm doing the same thing I did last week and I'm maintaining this program. And that gets exhausting and depressing. But if we can have a sense of accomplishment, like, okay, we got that thing done. Now we're going to get this thing done. We get a discipleship group started and there are 12 kids that say they want to come. We get a student leadership team launched and they pick a project, whatever it is. But the idea is you name the change you want to see, create your backlog, and then select something for your sprint and go after it. Again, it's, there are books written about this. One of them is called Scrum. But we're really finding in this season, the organizations that can really tighten in and focus a short time horizon are finding themselves gaining momentum, even in the molasses of COVID. Okay, let me take a breath and let you poke around and wonder about that. So I know I just opened up the fire hose on you. I just want to make sure that those general principles sound okay. And if you want to go find out more, you can go find out more.
That's good stuff, Mark. That's helpful.
So happy. One other thing that Mike suggested that he wanted me to mention was, I don't know, I guess Mike was in a conversation with one of my colleagues and talked about this process that we've got called virtual ministry assistants. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with this idea, but a virtual assistant, I mean, typically it's somebody off in, Taiwan that works for a company, that you talk to them all on the phone when you talk to customer service at Visa, right? Virtual ministry assistants are essentially the company is called Virtual Ministry Assistants. And basically what you're able to do is say, okay, I need somebody to manage my social media for me. I just need to get it consistently out there every day. Or I need somebody that'll update my website once a month. Or I need somebody that'll update my database or send out our newsletter. but you get these sort of administrative tasks that most people in youth ministry are not crazy about. And for a pretty, you don't have to hire somebody that's like even a 10-hour a week person. You basically hire somebody maybe for an hour a week to take that piece off of you that you just can't seem to get on top of. So if you can just Google virtual ministry assistants, or you can, you know what, I'm gonna drop my email in the chat just in case you want to reach out. Is there anything else about that, Mike, that you wanted me to say?
Yeah, it's funny, Mark, like you said, one of his colleagues was sharing that with me, and and I'm just gonna, first of all, Mark has, in all the conversations Mark have, and we talk often, never once talked to me about this. And then our buddy Trey, who's going to do the next training, is like, oh yeah, man, Mark doesn't even read an email anymore. He has this virtual assistant give him a synopsis of what he needs to do for the day, And so I don't know if that's true, but he was making fun of you. But in the process of that, it started ringing true. And Jason's on here, and I was at St. Matthew's last night, and Jason started just out of the blue talking to me about it, about what he's doing with it. And I was like, man, and so when I talked to Mark today, I was like, let's bring this up. Jason, what are some of the ways that you use it in your church? And it's not expensive. I mean, you're talking, depends on your package, but you're talking hundreds, not thousands, kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. She's been a lifesaver. I didn't, my previous church, I didn't have a virtual assistant, and I got here and they're like, oh, we have a social media person that does all of our stuff for you. I was like, you gotta be kidding. And it's been amazing. She's $100 a month, and she does all of my student ministry social media posts from Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is I need her to do. I just give her our calendar, shoot her pictures. She posts all of it and creates the graphics and things for promo posts and things of that nature. So she does everything. So our entire church uses her. She does more. There was another package for like $300 that we were paying her for before COVID, where she actually helps with registration for events and for retreats and things of that nature. So she does a whole lot more than just social media, but I cut her back to just the social media package. And it's been awesome. I've actually been able to, Mark's probably going to cringe when he hears me say this, but I've been able to get off of social media myself. I've deactivated my Facebook and Instagram but I was tired of being on there. It was a big distraction in my life. And I'd been wanting to do that for a long time. And so when I got to this new church and had my virtual assistant, I was like, I can finally get off of social media because I'm not having to be constantly on there posting our student ministry stuff. So it's been a huge blessing. I would encourage everybody to do it.
Wow.
And I didn't know that she was part of Ministry Architects for a while. She lives in South Mississippi. Never met her. Her name's Lauren, and she's amazing.
And I've never met my virtual assistant. And what Mike said is right. She reads all of my emails and then gives me a summary every week. And if there's something I need to deal with immediately, she texts it to me. But it saves me about 5 hours a week.
Mark, did you hear on Jason's some ring that sounded like a landline? I'm sorry, I hadn't heard one of those in a long time.
I actually thought it was a fax machine. That's how old I am. My thought was, oh my gosh, there's a fax coming in. What in the world?
When Jason said he got off social media, I didn't know he hopped in the DeLorean.
Definitely. Okay, y'all, two other quick things, and then Mike, I'm gonna let you wrap it up. On April the 13th, so basically a month from now, Trey, who Mike just talked about, who works both with Ministry Architects and Ministry Incubators. Ministry Incubators is more focused kind of on the social enterprise innovation side of things. He's going to come and talk about restoring momentum. I mean, I think we all know we're going back soon, and there's got to be some momentum restored, and he's going to talk about that. Then in May, on the 11th of May, literally 2 months from today, Stephanie Caro, whom some of you have met, who's just one of the leading voices in children's ministry in the country, and more importantly, in small church ministry. She's written 3 or 4 books about small church ministry. She's going to be coming to really focus in on that small church thing. So, so those are the 2 things that are coming up. And Mike's going to pray us out of here, or have one of you do that. But I just want to remind you, does anybody know the Spanish word, what the Spanish word corona means? It does not mean cerveza. Anybody know what it means?
It's like, oh my gosh, it's like royalty or king or something. Like, isn't it? Like,
Crown.
yeah, crown. That's it.
Crown. Like, so when you see Corona beer, I think there's a crown on there somewhere. I just, during this season of the coronavirus, let's just remember who the king is. Let's remember who wears the crown. And it's not the pandemic, and it's not the disruption, and it's not the forces of resistance. Jesus still wears the crown. And our mission is to follow in the wake of the greatest disruptor in the world, right? So I'll hand it back to you, Mike. Thank you all so much. I love being with this group, and it just feels like coming home. Y'all just sort of have hearts that welcome the stranger. So thank you for doing that.
Hey, before Mike closes us out, in the chat box, if you don't have it pulled up or whatever, but Ed has put links to the book that Mark mentioned, the 12-week year, as well as a link to the virtualministryassistance.com. And Mark put his email in there, mark@ministryincubators.com. So if you want to screenshot that before we close out, it's in the chat box.
Oh, thank you. Jeannie, thank you so much for managing that world and all the things. Ed, thank you too for making this all happen.
But if you don't read your email, is that really worth having it in the chat box?
It'll get to me. It's actually much more likely to get to me because I don't read it.
Oh my goodness. I want to encourage you, any of you that didn't text me your number, I would love for you to do that and get connected. One of the things that we do, if you're not part of this, our youth leaders around the state, once a month, we do a online, just an hour-long Zoom to touch base. And I want you each to be part of that. Some of you have been part of that. Some of you haven't. Text me. And if you don't like me, text Ryan Magoo, because he can get you in on that too. But Ryan and I kind of started that about a year ago. And so we've been doing that. It's just really a great time. We'll probably unpack some of what we talked about today on it. We
Mike, are we rescheduling that meeting that you canceled the morning of? Just curious.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, that I canceled the morning of.
Love you.
Somebody's bitter.
Yeah. I had a dead cat and a crying kid, but I'm sorry that it didn't fit your schedule, Magoo.
Shots fired.
But no, but I would love for each of you to be on there with Ryan Magoo and myself. And we have a great time, and a lot of you are on that. So text me, let me get you connected, and definitely indicate you want to be part of that. Mark, thank you for your time. Trey, who's going to speak on April 13th, just recently switched positions, but he was the New Jersey Mike Howington, but is a lot, better. And and so he knows our world of Methodism, and he's just an ultra guy. I've worked with him. Mark's connected with him, and Mark and Trey do my personal coaching, and so they are phenomenal, as you know Mark is. But you guys will enjoy Trey. And if I'm correct, I'm going off the top of my head, we're gonna talk about restoring momentum in that session, and then we'll follow that up with Stephanie, kind of dealing with small group ministry and how we look and all that. Also encourage you to join us on the 13th, because I think even a month from now, and on those Zoom calls, because the life is ever changing and flowing. And so I think there becomes new realities every time we get together, which then creates new momentum. On our last Zoom call, just going to share this right fast. We were all talking about camps, how we're going to do summer ministry, how we're going to do other stuff. And one of the youth leaders on there made a joke that he was up in front of a couple of his students and said, we'll just rent an island. We'll just go do our own island. And everybody laughed. And his kids were like, we want to do that. So then he found an island off of Florida that has a camp center. So I'm calling it Fry Island Ministry Retreat. But since that, 2 other youth pastors have called me to get his number to figure out how to make their own like island experience. Because if you're going to be in a pandemic, need to be isolated, you need your own island. So it's a really cool thing. So well, I share that with you to say, we find ideas in each other, and that's happened a lot where other people go, wow, I didn't even think about that. That is awesome. So so join us. So Mark, thank you again. And let me pray and get us out of here. Actually, I'm going to have Cam. He's way more spiritual than I am. Cam, will you pray us out tonight?
Absolutely. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father God, thank you for bringing us together to seek you. Thank you for the wisdom that was shared. God, we know that you are guiding us even through this pandemic. And as we interact with one another and do ministry with our youth, please continue to guide us. We love you, Lord. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.